Welcome, and thank you for coming out to our mental health seminar on navigating our lives with happiness. There are many false beliefs about finding happiness. Many of them start with, I will be happy when I have this baby, I will be happy when I get married, I will be happy when I graduate from university, I will be happy when I win $1 million. Or, I won't be happy when I get a divorce, I won't be happy when I lose this job, and I won't be happy unless I own a home. In the short term, these things can bring us a little bit of happiness, but in the long term, we need to make habits and change our lives so that we can maintain the happiness and have the intent towards happiness in our lives. Oftentimes we catastrophize the difficulties. We've lost our phone and the world has ended, and oftentimes it's not as difficult as we think that it is. We're able to decide to be happy as long as our basic needs are met. We have the choice to make our lives happy. We can accept our lives. Many of us want to be the super mom, we think we should be able to have the meal on the table, we think we should have a clean house, we think we should be able to get our kids to all of these different activities, or as a student, we think we should be able to get that A, and if we get the A, we think we should be able to get the A+. But these types of expectations just generate more anxiety and depression. We need to take the shoulds out of our sentences. I'm going to hand out some paper now. I want you to think about, do we need to be the best? Who says that and why? Can we just be okay with what is? And my friend Matthew is going to pass out some handouts for you to write down and really ponder and think about that question. We're born with a tendency towards optimism or pessimism. 50% of our genetics, we're born with a chemical in our brain that's called dopamine. And the transmitters in the chemicals fire up the brain to feel the joy that we experience in our lives. But there are times in our life when we need to seek help. If we can't get out of bed and depression has really hit us, if we feel like we're always sad all the time, then we need to see a doctor or a counselor. But 40% of our life of happiness is how we choose, what we choose through our actions and our thoughts. And this is where I'm going to focus on today in my speech. 10% of our life is circumstantial, which is way different than many of us think. We often think that circumstances are unfair, and that is why our life is awful, and that's why our life is depressing. Many of us spend time worrying, planning for the future, or thinking about the past. And a word that we hear, a buzzword, is to stay in the present. I'm going to show you a bit of a YouTube video that speaks to living right in the present, right in the moment. So if you're in traffic, you're just thinking about being in traffic and you're not planning for the future or thinking about the past, even just 10 minutes ago or 10 minutes in the future. Thanks.
This graph shows happiness on the vertical axis, and you can see that bar there representing how happy people are when they're focused on the present, when they're not mind-wandering. As it turns out, people are substantially less happy when their minds are wandering than when they're not. Now you might look at this result and say, okay, sure, on average people are less happy when they're mind-wandering, but surely when their minds are straying away from something that wasn't very enjoyable to begin with, at least then mind-wandering should be doing something good for us. Nope. As it turns out, people are less happy when they're mind-wandering no matter what they're doing. For example, people don't really like commuting to work very much. It's one of their least enjoyable activities, and yet they are substantially happier when they're focused only on their commute than when their mind is going off to something else. It's amazing. So how could this be happening? I think part of the reason, a big part of the reason, is that when our minds wander, we often think about unpleasant things, and they are enormously less happy when they do that. Our worries, our anxieties, our regrets. And yet, even when people are thinking about something neutral, they're still considerably less happy than when they're not mind wandering at all. Even when they're thinking about something they would describe as pleasant, they're actually just slightly less happy than when they aren't mind wandering. If mind wandering were a slot machine, it would be like having the chance to lose $50, $20, or $1, right? You'd never want to play. So I've been talking...
So that's one of the habits that would help us to be more happy in our lives. To increase the dopamine in our life, another habit that we can do is to exercise. Humor is also very healing and brings up the dopamine in our brain. Socializing, taking time for yourself. There's an analogy of we all have a bucket, and if our bucket is empty for ourselves, we can't be filling up other people's buckets. So for mom or dad, we need to have taken time for ourselves before we can give it to our children. Socializing, having a friend to help us through our difficult times and just be a listening ear. Many of us have biases towards happiness, and we need to look at those biases and think about, will we really be happy with that $1 million, or are these habits worth implementing into our lives to change ourselves and to bring more happiness to ourselves? Thank you for listening to me today. I hope you've got some habits to change to go home, and I hope that you achieve more happiness in your life.